Good afternoon. Thank you guys all so much for being here today. If you haven't met me, I'm Rebecca. I'm Jeff's wife. I just wanted to again say thank you so much. It's so amazing to see how many people loved Jeff. I'll never forget the moment I met him. It was at Squam Lake at his parents' house. It was May 12th, 2004. And I remember the first two songs I ever heard him sing, Landslide and Sweet Baby James. We became really good friends that summer I spent in New Hampshire, and that friendship blossomed into the love of a lifetime. We dated long distance for over a year, and then decided if our love could endure the distance, our love could endure anything. And we were right. I had 13 amazing years with Jeff and 10 years of marriage that were happy and filled with joy. He was my very best friend, and I'm so grateful for the gifts he's left me, our two beautiful children, and a lifetime of priceless memories of the happy years that we had together. Jeff is still here in my heart. I'll spend the rest of my life telling our children what a wonderful, amazing, brave, courageous father that they had. You can help me keep Jeff's memory bright and vibrant for our children. I want to encourage you to share a memory or a story with our videographer. And also out in the foyer, there's cards to write a special memory or a story, or just maybe write something to Jeff. But to preserve those and keep them bright for our children. Jeff is actually going to sing for us now a song called October that he wrote about our long distance relationship and the day he asked me to marry him on October 30th, 2005.
I will find you, I will find you when the summer's gone. And when I find you, we'll climb a mountain in the October sun. Falling, the breeze is calling us together now. The leaves are falling, my knees falling, oh, will you be the one? Times are hard then, I've been away from you for so damn long. Times are hard then, a lonely heart, you know, just comes undone. Well, I will love you, and I will love you now for years to come. Well, I will love you, and you and I will always be as one. summer's gone. The October sun. Oh, when the summer's gone. Oh, in the October sun. Oh, when the summer's gone. In the October sun. Oh, when the summer's gone. In the October sun. When the summer's gone.
Boy, I didn't know I was going to be the one following up on Jeff's song like that. So here it goes. I'm Stephen, Jeff's older brother. For those who don't know us, most of us here do, but I want to talk a little bit about growing up with Jeff. And I could talk all day about stories and stuff, but I told Rebecca and Debbie I'd go 5 to 8 minutes. So when we were growing up, it was always Jim, Debbie, and the boys. Or it was always Stephen and Jeff, or Jeff and Stephen. We were best friends for long periods of our lives until we both got older, got married, and had our own kids. But for 20, 30 years, since he was a little kid, we had that classic American picture postcard kind of scene growing up. We played together. We did everything together. We biked together. We swam. We did everything that you'd want to see in a couple of brothers. And one of the things that we did growing up a lot of was Legos. And I want to just talk a little bit about how Jeff was so clever and creative, especially with Legos. Now, Legos today are, as you all know, are pretty sophisticated with different things. But back in the 70s, when we were kids, it was just blocks. And very early on, Jeff would take these Legos. Jeremy, this is important. Listen to this. Your dad would take Legos and he would, any kind of electronic toy, he would rip apart. He would harvest all the motors and parts from electronics from a lot of these toys, and he would make things out of the Legos with those motors. I could go on, but he would make snowmobiles that had shock absorbers. They'd have tracks on them with using a stapler to make the tread on the track. He would make chairlifts. We had chairlifts going, or a gondola that would start at the basement stairs and would go to the top. And he would make these motors, and the next week that toy would be broken apart, and he would do something else. And we always played well together. We were always together doing these things. I was more of the neat guy. The chairlift tower had to be color coordinated, and Jeff didn't care about that. My snowmobile had stripes and black seats like a real snowmobile, and Jeff didn't care about any of that stuff. It was all the functioning electronics and the engineering of what makes it. So the Greasons, we were different than most kids. We left Bow in the summers. The day after we got out of school, we went up to Holderness, to Squam Lake, where we had a camp. And it was really kind of, growing up, it was surreal. We had two lives. You had your school life in Bow, and then there was the fun times. Well, they were all fun, but the Holderness times up at Squam Lake. Up at Squam, it was, you know, the Legos, the bag of Legos went up there. It was the same thing, but instead of snowmobiles and chairlifts, he'd build boats, electronic boats, and all kinds of things like that. It was a time, too, when we got to see our cousins, Kim Fraser, and then Katie, and Kristen Hutchinson. They were like his little sisters, because Jeff was always the youngest. The Bakers and the Garlands, kicked the cans, water skiing, just lots of fun times growing up together. His love affair for electronics got into explosives and fireworks. He would often, had a love affair for bottle rockets, anything that could explode. He could build a circuit board with a 9-volt battery and make some sort of a toy or explosive device with. And then, of course, when he got into college, at Keene, you could easily tell when you got into his apartment, his room didn't have beer cans and stuff like that, or pretty women on posters on the walls. It was all amplifiers that he was building, magnets that would be built into speakers, computers. Back in the 80s, you didn't have computers, you had to buy them, but he would build computers from scratch, you know, everything from scratch, all through a mail order and stuff. Kind of segues into when we were growing up, Jeff and I never read books. Debbie here was the one who read books. But we never, we never read books. Jeff and I, all we did, we were bored all the time. We watched TV. And I don't want Kyle or Parker to hear this, but we would watch so much TV. And one of the things that we would do is Jeff and I would both impersonate and try to imitate a lot of these people on TV or movies and stuff. And I had a list of some of Jeff's best material I just wanted to get through real quick. Usually when Jeff was impersonating somebody, he is a real talent. I mean, people don't know how talented he was, but he would make me laugh so much, and he's kind of shaped my character, my personality, the way it is now. But it started with Bugs Bunny, you know, Super Friends. Growing up, TV was on for 4 or 5 hours on Saturday mornings, and Jeff would do all the characters. The Godzilla movies, he could imitate men and women, Japanese people. He loved some of his later work. He was good at Arnold Schwarzenegger. He did that one a lot. Charlton Heston, any of those Easter time biblical movies. Samuel L. Jackson, it was another good one. He always, and it wasn't any prejudice or racism or anything like that, but it was always, we made fun of those characters, those actors or characters that were bad, they were losers, or people that were just easy to pick on and easy to imitate, and Jeff was so good at it. Star Wars was huge with Jeff. He could do everyone from Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi, but more so that he liked the villains. The Emperor, Grand Moff Tarkin. Scott knows what I'm talking about. That time down at the pig roast that morning. Just lots of characters. Anyone from The Simpsons, Family Guy. He was a huge fan of Eddie Murphy movies. Anything with Eddie Murphy he could really do well. Of course, George Carlin was one of our favorites together. And then probably he had a huge range of imitating different characters, and we would just crack each other up. And there were the years, that one year that I lived in Portsmouth, and and I don't want to finish with this, but Beavis and Butthead was such a stupid show. And Jessica would get so mad when we were in the living room watching Beavis and Butthead. And we kind of looked like Butthead, right? We got the hair, the big eyebrows, but he could do it so well. And it was so, you look back at things like that, but boy, was he funny. He was just so talented. He really shaped me who I was. We were very, very close. Shared bedroom. He was my best man at my wedding. We kind of looked like each other. We talked like each other. I hear that a lot. We would play charades or Pictionary, and we were probably better than anybody in this room. Literally one word, and I would be able to guess what he was talking about. Or I would draw one line on the board in Pictionary, and Jeff could. We had the same, like we thought the same exact way. It was weird. I just wanted to thank you all for coming and tell you about how important he was and how he shaped my life. I know his life was short. It's short for some people, right? And it's long, too long sometimes for others. And it's awful. But I'm really excited to have known him and had the opportunity to be with him for so long. And I love him so much. I will never, ever forget him. And I feel like I'm doing a lot of the same things that I did with Jeff with my kids. So I'm passing it on to their generation. And I wouldn't do it if it wasn't for him. So thank you.
Okay. Hi. My name's Shannon. Rebecca, I just wanted to say thank you for letting me play today here for Jeff and to be a part of this. It means a tremendous amount to me. And I also wanted to tell you that I knew Jeff when he was young, single, and when we were living in Concord, and he didn't have a lot of luck with the ladies. You were, I can say unequivocally, his true love. I've never seen him happier after he met you, and I'm just so happy you guys were able to have those two beautiful kids and share your lives together. Jeff and I started playing together in about 1994, and we started out being a twosome in which Matt Pappas's uncle, Chris Pappas, let us play at his coffee shop called Cafenio's in downtown Concord. And we would really practice hard and work up a bunch of songs, and we would play for $25 and a bag of day-old donuts or bagels, whichever they had the most of. So we had our picture made in the paper, and I remember I had dressed up like a dork. I had a tie on and my big puffy shirt, and Jeff showed up in t-shirt and shorts and sandals. So I always thought that was funny because you had the two of us in the picture of the paper, me all dressed up on one side and Jeff wearing shorts and a t-shirt and sandals on the other. So we had to kind of reconfigure about what kind of band we wanted to be. And then we started practicing really hard and started incorporating new members. We had Kurt Ekstrom and Dave Wally, and then we started to play out in the bars. And we had some pretty good success. We had some pretty good crowds. And then we changed that lineup, and we got Mike Blaisdell and John Blaisdell to play bass and drums, and we played some more out in the clubs. And one of our best shows was almost 20 years ago. It was actually it's over 20 years ago now. It was New Year's Eve 1997. We played at what was Forefathers. It's now the Barley House. And we played all night long, all our songs, and it was really well attended. People were dancing and singing along with us, and we just had a fantastic time. And then later, around 2000, we went into the studio and we recorded a couple of songs, of which I think you guys know now what they are. I think you have copies of them and have heard them before. So some of my best memories of Jeff is of us singing together. We were close friends. We never argued about stupid stuff, and we just got together and we played and sang together. And I'll be forever thankful for that, because I've yet to find another person that I can do that with, that clicked with me harmonically so well. So, and I just wanted to say personally that your daughter was simply amazing today. The way she was able to, with such poise, talk about her dad and how his memory is still alive in our hearts, and I'll never forget that. So thank you so much for including me in today, and I wish you the best, and I hope we stay in touch. I know I have some pictures that I can find and send to you, and I know I have some live concert audio of some of our rehearsals and some of our concerts out around town. So I'm going to do my best to find those and transfer them onto some MP3s and send them to you. So thank you again. And to all the Greason family, thank you very much.
Yeah, Jeff will be missed. He is a friend and a worker, partner in my business. He helped create the VeriSurf software brand. 16 years I've been working with Jeff, and he's turned into a great friend and business partner. He's one of the big reasons for VeriSurf's success. He would invent things for us and put it into the software to solve all the problems that customers needed. So with his ability, electronics and software development, he was able to do things that nobody else could do. And it's those things that helped us create a software product that many companies use today. So I owe him a great dedication for his contribution to our software, and his legacy will live on with the VeriSurf product. We, in memory of Jeff, we put his picture into our software so customers and employees can see him for many, many years to come. So VeriSurf is very grateful for his duties and help. He was a great, caring, motivated person, and I know he loved his job, and we loved him working for us. And all the VeriSurf employees miss him and care for him and love him. And it's too bad that he left so early in life, but we have to honor him for our life. And so with that, Rebecca and Annabelle and Jeremy, your dad was wonderful. So thank you.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Matt Pappas. I'm a longtime friend of Jeff's. I'll only be about 4 or 5 hours given all the stories that I have with Jeff. Just kidding. The Greasons and Pappases go way back. It started, as far as I can tell, with my sister being friends with Jeff's sister, Debbie, when they met in high school in the early 1980s. A couple years later, Jeff's brother, Steve, became friends with my brother, Mark, and yet a few years later, it was Jeff and me. My first memory of Jeff was actually at Wilbur's on West Street in Concord. Those of you from Concord or Bow will remember Wilbur's as the local hardware store before the superstores of Lowe's or Home Depot. Everyone went to Wilbur's, including both of our fathers. Jeff and I were probably 11 or 12. Both our dads were there in the aisles shopping for one thing or another. And they stopped to talk. There were two preteens awkwardly meeting in a hardware store. I didn't know Jeff then, as we attended different schools. Having a dad that was friends with half the city of Concord, I just assumed Mr. Greason was just another business acquaintance, Kiwanis Club member, or just someone who bought a car from my dad and Jeff was his son, whom I didn't know. Minutes later, after checking out and getting in the car, I asked my dad who that man was he was speaking to, and it was Mr. Greason. Put two and two together, realized that the other kid was Steve and Deb's little brother, Jeff. So high school years, later on, we both attended Concord High. I was a year ahead of Jeff, even though I was only 3 months older, just a matter of when our birthdays fell. We hit it off well, hanging out together here and there. We never had any classes together, but we did get together outside of school, and here's a sampling. Moped rides all over town. Like our brothers, we tooled around while visited mutual friends, riding around Concord, mostly around Bow, though. During the winter months, we transitioned to snowmobiling on occasion. Never had one, so I usually was on the back of Jeff's. Occasionally, they'd let me ride alone, heading out to Turry Pond or behind Rocky Point Drive, for those who know. So whether on mopeds or snowmobiles or just listening to Neil Peart's drumming on the latest Rush album on Jeff's stereo or hanging at my house, it was common for us to spend time together at Ridgewood Drive or Middlebury Street. Later on in high school, there was a weekend at the Greasons at Bretton Woods. Jeff invited me to join his family one weekend. Bedrooms were being used by others, so Jeff and I, being the youngest, shared the pull-out couch. We just happened to find several other high school students there, Concord High students. They are the same weekend. Typical teens, we didn't really pay much attention to the beautiful scenery, the Mount Washington, the iconic Mount Washington Hotel, etc. But we did ski around the mountain, pausing at one point to pose for a picture with a mutual friend, Betsy Shartner, by one of the resort's photographers. Yes, someone actually did buy those touristy picture gimmicks. I still have that picture somewhere. Trips to Squam Lake, as Steve mentioned, were very common on weekends. So common that Mr. and Mrs. Greason probably thought they gained a few sons. Me, John, Sean Graham, Jeff and Jamie Martin, and others. Some of you are in the audience, I know. We'd hang out a little on the beach, hit golf balls to the float. Jeff would then fetch them with his scuba gear. Trips to Neffa Beach, Rattlesnake Cove, Eagle Cliff, or even Pleasure Island. Steve knows that one. And Johnny. And Don. A few others. Jeff and Steve spent so much time on the lake, they knew every nook and cove on that lake. They were aware of every shallow rock and buoy, except this once. I don't know where we were on the lake, but the boat was full of friends, as usual. We were probably listening to Steve's rap or reggae songs, one of the newest favorite bands of ours, possibly Alice in Chains, most likely. Then Jeff, who was driving, quickly realized he was in the wrong place. Shallow water. Dodging rocks like landmines. Panicked, he quickly raised the motor to save the propeller, but it was too late. Huge chunk of it broke off, and we had to clumsily head home at a fraction of the normal speed after that, most likely embarrassed at the prospect that we almost needed a tow home. Though we went to different colleges, Jeff went to Keene, I went to UNH, we kept in close contact. Jeff came to visit every so often, spending weekends in my dorm or my apartment. Upon graduation, Jeff eventually moved to Portsmouth, and I kind of followed him to the seacoast, taking a job teaching at Oyster River High School in Durham. Spent a lot of time at Jeff's apartment on Dover Street. Small parties at his apartment, walking in downtown Portsmouth, hanging around the loading dock of the plumbing business next door. They shared a driveway. Riding our mountain bikes off-road along Route 1B, along the beach, and then back through the historic cemeteries. Needless to say, we spent a lot of time together. And while working at Oyster River High School, I met my wife, Beth, sitting over here. We hit it off well. Our relationship was blossoming after a few weeks of working together. Beth eventually called me and asked me out on a date. There was just one major problem. Beth calling me for a date, but I had already had plans. Jeff and I were going out for a drink in Portsmouth that night. In a split-second decision, I thought to myself, well, what the heck? I invited Beth to join us. So my first date with my future wife was also with Jeff. After a couple of years, Beth and I were engaged, eventually scheduled our wedding. There was just one person asked to be my best man. That was Jeff. When it came time to offer a toast, he sure had some fodder for the typical roast of the groom, the best man speech. Yeah, he shared the story of him joining me on my first date with my wife. A few years later, I was excited to hear that Jeff was marrying Rebecca, even more excited to hear that they would be sticking around, staying in Jeff's house in Elliott, eventually settling in Dover, just a few miles away from me. As we grew older, we settled down, both having kids. We had our share of heartbreak and joy, but we were able to share many family moments as we lived about 10 miles apart. As Jeff's illness continued to steal his life little by little, I didn't want to accept the inevitable. The last 2 years were quite the struggle, and Jeff fought hard, but as we all know, he ultimately succumbed to it. It's hard to say goodbye to a friend, especially one I have known for over 30 years. I'm comforted by the fact that I was able to know him for so long and share so many memories. As a history teacher, I'll close with a little bit of history, with Abraham Lincoln's famous letter to Mrs. Bixby of Boston, and I'll paraphrase for the occasion. Quote, "I feel how weak and fruitless must be any word of mine which should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming. I pray that time may assuage the anguish of your bereavement and leave you only with the cherished memories of Jeff." Thank you very much.
I want to start by saying thank you to the Greason family, and I especially want to thank you, Jeff, for even on your worst days welcoming me into your home, giving it your best during all and every single one of your physical therapy appointments. Hopefully as much of a help that I was to you and your family. It was such a gift for me to get to know you personally, get to know your family. As I walked in today and your sister was speaking about the utmost example and true exchange of love between you and your wife, again, I feel blessed to have witnessed that firsthand. And Rebecca, the way that you loved for and cared for your husband, Jeff, was a lesson in life for me, and I'm grateful. I just am going to cherish the memories, like a lot of the memories that were shared today, my personal memories of being in your home, getting Jeff to play the guitar again, getting Jeff up that third flight of stairs to the music studio, Jeff joyously walking me around the house, giving me the grand tour, and excitingly showing me all of his creations, all of his equipment, all of his expertise in his career. I'm grateful. Thank you. I'm happy to be here today, and my blessings to all of you. And Jeff, may you rest in peace and no longer fight for life. And may your melody carry on. Blessings.
My name's Doug DeGrappo. I am a lifelong friend of Jeff's. That being said, it's odd for me to actually say Jeff because I've never called him that before in my life. He's always been Grease to me, and he will always be. My first thoughts when I think of him is he's friggin' brilliant. I was in college. I had to go to him with questions for my statistics test. He did not take the class, and at 7:30 in the morning, he tells me what I need to do, and I go to the test and ace it. He was the guy that built his own speakers. He was the guy that learned heard a song on the radio, and 2 weeks later mastered it on the guitar. He was just a cool dude. I was lucky enough to get to know him in college. I lived across the hall from him, and they were nice enough to let me in, and I actually lived with them for a few weeks before I made my way off campus. But we became great friends. Getting back to music, we had some spectacular parties at Keene. he was an amazing guitarist, and during the parties he would actually let me sing some Led Zeppelin songs, and I probably was not good, but he really, I gotta say, he made me feel like I was good, and he was really amazing. Throughout our life and the meanderings of life, we've kind of been in contact, not been in contact, and have been in contact. We've been very lucky over the years because everything kind of coincided at the same time. I had a family start. I began my family. The same thing happened with him. He moved to Elliott, and we were really close then. I remember the little kids at Halloween, and in the start of his family before they moved into the bigger home in Dover. And we were very lucky. We were able to be, not in constant contact, but still remain really, really close friends. And I'll tell you, I'm gonna miss him. I really am gonna miss him. It's hard to say goodbye to one of your best buddies, and I've always felt that way. I feel really lucky that actually I was able to listen to Steve, his brother. His brothers both talk. They sound exactly like him, and I can hear Jeff in their inflection of their voices. And I hope that as your kids grow up, you can get a little bit of your dad from your uncles, because that's exactly the way he was. I could speak at length, but I just want to say what a great guy he is, how much he's meant to me in my life. My wife and I just love them dearly, I'm excited to see the attributes that he has in you, in the two kids, into you, Annabelle, Jeremy, as you grow up, and life keeps moving forward. Thank you.
Okay.
So, Kyle, why don't you tell us how pleased you were that Jeff
Oh yeah.
gave
Yes.
you a special gift?
Yeah. Did I tell the story about it?
Yeah, sure.
So one day during the summer, last summer, we would go up to Dover to Jeff's house quite a lot, my family and I. And one day we went there, and I was, walking around while my parents were talking to Jeff. Then my mom comes and says that, she says that Jeff wants to talk to you and Jeff has something for you. And then I go, and then he says he's sitting on the couch and he says, there's something under the couch that I want you to have. And I pull it out, and it's a guitar case with an electric guitar in it, and gave me an amplifier and everything. And I've been taking lessons for about 2 months now, and I really enjoy it, and it's a very nice thing for Jeff to have done.
Well, and in fact, so this is Kyle Greason, and this is Jeff's nephew, and I'm Ray Schlaughter, and I'm Kyle's grandfather. And so Jessica Schlaughter is my daughter. And so Kyle is not just any guitar player, but he's become quite adept at it, and he's a real fast learner, and it's been a real delight watching him grow with this guitar, and it's all due to Uncle Jeff. So
yeah,
really appreciate that a bit. I too have a story because Jeff always loved his guitar, and he was also kind of an outlier in all good ways. But we when Jessica and Stephen lived in Hanover, and Jessica was in school there, we went to visit quite often. One time they had a party, and they lived along a little stream, and so it was getting late. It was in the fall, and it was late, and we had a campfire going, and there was Jeff, after all the folks had gone inside because it was kind of cold and dark, but he was out there stoking the fire and playing his guitar, and he could care less whether people joined him or not. He just was so engrossed in his guitar and in his music. So I kind of wandered out there, and I just sat down. I said, "What's going on?" He said, doesn't matter. I love it here. This is my life. This is what I enjoy doing. And so I said, well, okay, so can you play? And I can't remember what the song was. It may have been Sweet Home Alabama or something. But it was I just tossed it out, and he jumped right in and started playing that song and knew the words. And so we laughed. And I just, I didn't know him well, but what I did know, I'm just glad I knew him. So thank you. Right?
Hi. Well, we're here today to celebrate my brother Jeff's life, and thank you all for coming to be a part of it. Although it was cut way too short, Jeff had a joyful and fulfilling life. He truly enjoyed his job. It was practically a hobby for him. I guess you can probably tell that by the stories you heard that preceded me, because he was in the electronics and the computer and the design industry. And he was lucky to have a boss who was also his dear friend. Jeff was passionate about music. He loved to play the guitar, the violin, the harmonica, to sing and create songs. He liked tinkering around his house and property. He had visions of how he would turn it into his dream home. He could fix almost anything: computers, electronics, household appliances, you name it. Why is this making me cry? He was very handy. But most of all, he adored his family: Rebecca, Annabelle, and Jeremy. He took great joy in watching and interacting with his children. When Annabelle asked how something worked, Jeff had this amazing ability to explain it right away, clearly and concisely, so that she understood. He was a great dad. Rebecca and Jeff had a mutual respect and consideration for each other that is rare in most couples. This was especially evident to me watching Rebecca care for Jeff these last few years, always with positivity, composure, and grace. I take a lot of comfort in knowing that Jeff knew what it was to love and to be loved wholeheartedly, unconditionally, and completely. Some people go through their entire lives without ever knowing that. So in this, Jeff was fortunate. The only thing Jeff didn't have in abundance was good health. Even before the leukemia, he suffered from some pretty debilitating conditions. He always soldiered through them, but withstood a lot of discomfort and pain. These last few years, Mass General had an army of doctors, specialists, nurses, and therapists to help Jeff, not just with his physical health, but also his mental and emotional health. But he wasn't too into therapy, the therapy thing. Mostly he just wanted Rebecca by his side and to get back to his children as soon as possible. He did make one exception though, and that was for the music therapist. She was always welcome. The music therapist was a young woman who had a ready smile and a sweet voice, and she recently taught Jeff to play the ukulele when his guitar became too cumbersome. And since she was young, she played a lot of today's hits and didn't know many of the songs that Jeff loved. So she told me when I visited one of the last days that Jeff would send her home with homework, that's what he called it, to learn some of his favorite songs. And one of those songs was Tom Petty's I Won't Back Down. The lyrics really meant something to him. They are a tribute to his long battle and how he fought so hard to stay here with us. And Shannon, Jeff's good friend and former bandmate, is going to play it for us right now.
Hi, everybody. The first time I met Jeff was in the cellar of my father's condo. I was throwing a party, and some of you may have been there. It was a condo that my father never quite went to. He bought it, and then he would spend time with his future wife, my stepmother now, in Manchester. So we had this condominium up at Edgewood Heights, open and free to use. So of course we took full advantage of that. But I remember meeting Jeff for the first time in the cellar because he was down there and he had my guitar on, and I'm quite a bit shorter than Jeff or any of the Greasons for that matter. And he was wearing my guitar, and it was way up here. but he was strumming it with a quarter. And I don't know if you know, but that's a no-no if you're in the guitar world. Like, you just don't strum another man's guitar with a coin. So I was like, hey, who are you, first of all? And second of all, why are you playing a guitar with a quarter? And he felt immediately bad, and he started to take the guitar off. And I said, no, you can play it. And I gave him a pick. And I was like, you don't play another man's guitar with a coin. So years later, I ended up seeing him at Keene State. He was a year younger than me, and he ended up moving in below us at Keene State. So I got to see him again there. And it wasn't until 1993-94 that he and I ran into each other again and started playing music together. And Jeff always made me sound better. I'm going to do my best to get through this. The words are on the back of the program if you feel like helping me through this. Jeff had a tremendous ability to sing harmony. Stephen was talking about his many talents. Other than impressions, he was a great singer, and not just a melody singer, but he could sing harmony just like that. Somebody could sing something and he could find the notes either above or below it. And I can't tell you, as you'll probably see in a second, how important that is. Well, I won't back down. No, I won't back down. You can stand me up at the gates of hell, but I won't back down. Gonna stand my ground, won't be turned around. Gonna keep this world from dragging me down. Gonna stand my ground, and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. Hey, I will stand my ground, and I won't back down. Well, I know what's right. I got just one life in a world that keeps on dragging me down. Gonna stand my ground, and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. Hey, I will stand my ground, and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. Hey, I will stand my ground, and I won't back down. Gonna miss you, Jeff.
Okay. Hi, Rebecca. Hi, Annabelle. Hi, Jeremy. First of all, this is such a beautiful service, and we're so honored to be able to be here. And I guess I just wanted to, first of all, just say thank you to Rebecca and Jeff I think over the past 2 years, what I've witnessed and what I've seen is just true love, and just the way that Rebecca cared for Jeff day in and day out, whether he was in the hospital or at home, is just something that we don't get to witness that often in life. And as a woman and as a wife and a mother, I've just learned so much from you, Rebecca, and I'll carry everything that I've learned with me for the rest of my life, and so I appreciate that. And Richard, I'll let you go. Thank you.
And I just want to say it was such an honor that I got to know Jeff these past 2 years, and all three of you. He's such a strong, awesome person, and he just taught me so much, and you guys are just an amazing family, and so happy that I got to be part of this.
I would just like to say that over the past 2 years, the three of us have spent, I don't know, hundreds of hours with Jeff and know him pretty well. And when he would talk about Rebecca, Annabelle, or Jeremy, everything in the room would just change, because he would go from being, you know, frustrated and sad to be away from you guys to just like glowing with happiness, and was so proud to be, you know, able to be your husband, Rebecca, and a father to you and Jeremy and Annabelle. And that brought me great happiness and joy to be able to see him happy during these past 2 years.
My name is Lauren. I went to college with Jeff from 1989 to 1993 at Keene State. He was one of my tightest friends for all four years. I spent a good amount of time with him for a long time. In fact, I lived in Portsmouth for a while at the same time, so I haven't seen him much over the years since, but we're very tight for a long time. He's probably the most brilliant person I've ever met, one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. Kind-hearted, good-hearted, brilliant guy, talented, just great, and loved by all of us. And we all have a lot of great memories about him. He's a big loss for all of us, but he's also been a great gift for all of us. And that's why so many people are here today, because he was greatly loved. And probably the thing I'll remember about him the most is his laugh, which was absolutely infectious. And that's the thing that will always ring in my head. I have it in my head for the rest of my life. I'll always remember Jeff's laugh. And I will always appreciate the time I had with him.
So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jim, I'm the oldest brother. And I've got sorry about that. I've got a few funny stories I'd like to share, and then some things that I used to look forward to with Jeff. So I'll start with this little story about a bumblebee. Jeff was just a little kid. He was outside at the lake house. He was in his diaper, and having a good old time. And then suddenly he started crying for no apparent reason. So what do you do when a kid's crying? Maybe there's something wrong with the diaper. So Mimi went and checked the diaper, and upon opening the diaper, she found a large bumblebee crawling around on Jeff's left buttocks, which was clearly responsible for his discomfort. The poor bumblebee. All right. Then I have another story about Jeff's middle name, Reed. So we in fact used Jeff's middle name, Reed, for our daughter Isabella Reed Greason. So when Stephanie and I were getting ready to check out of the Portland hospital with our newborn girls, it was important that we had all the paperwork filled out correctly. They wouldn't let us leave without proper names. And we were having some difficulty trying to figure out how to spell Reed, because there's several ways to spell Reed. So we decided to call Jeff, and so he could resolve this dilemma for us. So we called Jeff and go, Jeff, how do you spell your middle name? And he thought for a few seconds and said that he actually didn't know the correct spelling of his middle name. And he was 31 at the time. The problem was resolved with a call to Mimi, because she's got it all figured out. Yeah. All right. Then there's the questionable beer. So I had learned how to make beer when I was in college. And I remember I made a bad batch, or a batch of beer that had kind of an off taste to it, and it didn't quite come up to my standards. So I decided to call Jeff. And I go, Jeff, I've got a couple of cases of beer here that I'm not interested in. They don't meet my standards. 5 minutes later, there's a knock on my door, and Jeff took the beer with him. He wasn't of age at the time, I should say. So, that's what big brothers are for, stuff like that. All right, my last funny story is about a bike seat. And this occurred when Stephen and Jeff, they used to come out to the state of Washington and visit us when we lived out there. And we were on a mountain bike ride, I think in the Gifford National Forest, and Jeff was falling behind, so Stephen and I stopped to wait for him. And we suddenly heard some sounds of distress or some choice words echoing through the forest. So apparently something had gone wrong. And when Jeff he started approaching us, we could see that the seat on his bike was pointing straight up in the air. So we figured apparently he had a crash. It was quite a spectacle to see a seat configuration, pointing straight up, and we could only imagine the resulting discomfort that must have transpired. But in that case, the seat was repairable. So now I just want to go over a few things that I used to look forward to with Jeff that meant a lot. One being the visits to Washington. Both Stephen and Jeff would come out on an annual, it turned out to be an annual ritual. They'd come out for a week or whatever, and we'd have great times going camping, in the gorge and hiking and river raft riding, and we even did some spring skiing at Bachelor one time. Jeff enjoyed the hiking the least, but he was always rewarded with a nice hot tub and some refined home brew at that time. Little did he know he was just a few miles from his future wife-to-be. So another favorite pastime was the annual ritual of putting the docks in and taking the docks out at the lake in the spring and fall. So this was a brother and a brother-in-law project, and it seems like Jeff and I and Scott were always in the water, and Stephen was always on. He remained dry somehow. Yeah, smart. He's a smart one. Our biggest challenge was dealing with the wetsuits that seemed to be shrinking in size every year. But Jeff, he had the whole process. He had it really figured out. So he was kind of the leader, and I would just, do what he told me. So he was a genius with his music and his instruments. He once built his own synthesizer, and I guess he's built a lot of other things that I didn't know about. But we all loved to listen to Jeff singing and playing his guitar. That was great. He was like a human Alexa, only his name was Jeff. All you had to say was, Jeff, play Sweet Home Alabama, and he would start playing it. Somehow he knew all the words and the lyrics and the songs. He had it all in his head. And I don't know where he got that wonderful talent from. So in closing, it's not fair that his life was cut short. This is something that we can never fully understand. Nonetheless, he had a lot to be proud of. A loving family, a beautiful home, and a career that he loved. So we will miss you, brother.
Hi, I'm Scott Kanoki. I worked with Jeff, who's I consider a friend more than a coworker, but I've been very fortunate to work with him for 15 years now. And we had a lot of interesting professional and non-professional moments together. We gave Jeff a lot of hard work, and we'd call him from some demonstration, software demonstration somewhere at an important client like Boeing or someplace like that, really frustrated, and needing Jeff's help to get through a demo. Otherwise, our whole world was going to come crashing down around us. And Jeff would grab the phone, and no matter how frustrated we sounded and urgent we sounded, Jeff would have patience with us and bail us out through when we knew things were getting tough. And he always had a very cheerful attitude with us, which I think he got even more cheerful after him and Rebecca met and he started his family. And it was almost like you could call him with a big problem, and Jeff would act like there's nothing you could do to me to make my life bad, because his life was so good, I think. So Rebecca, I think, and the kids really were a big part of that. And so over the years, Jeff was there for us and for me, and not only was he there professionally, but as a friend. When we get together, which was far too few at times for company meetings or trade shows or whatever, we laugh and joke and do imitations and joke around. And in fact, Jeff helped me with a few things like "Shut up, Beavis." It used to be worse than that, but Jeff helped me with that. Or Hank Hill, "That boy's not right." And a couple other classic lines, but we could sit there and tell jokes and imitations for until our sides split. But very, very blessed and thankful for the time that I was working with Jeff and friends with Jeff, and just can't believe he's not around anymore. And for his family, I want them to understand that he was, he's extraordinary, but I'm not sure you know just how extraordinary. Really strong engineer and programmer and professional, but just a great person as well. One of a kind, can't be replaced. We love you, Jeff, and we are going to be praying for your family, and we'll be there for them if they need anything. Thanks.
So Jeff and I worked together in a couple of companies, and some of the things we did was building hexapods. And I remember one time we had to work overnight on a hexapod, and it's just, when you work together on a tight schedule, it's a bonding experience, and it's very good. I felt a good camaraderie with him. And it was very, very nice. And so we left that, and we started working for another actually fun company called Nova Cruise. They made electric scooters and bicycles. And, we had a lot of fun. Him building the electronics and motors, and I'm designing the frame, the bicycle, putting all together, and basically beating the hell out of them, trying to break them whenever we can. And this is all what we're supposed to do. Obviously, we had a lot of fun around the workshop. We actually raced around the workshop on some of the scooters we did, and skidding around, crashing, of course, and doing wheelies actually, and falling on our backs. that was crazy. Burning motors, crazy orange smoke coming from the electronics. It was a happy time, and I really missed it when we went our separate ways. The company didn't succeed, but we really learned a lot, and we grew attached quite a bit because of that experience. So it was very nice. I enjoyed myself with his company, and also with his kids too. Very, very good kids. Nice house, and it was just I'm gonna miss him. So, thanks.
Jeff Greason was my daddy, and I wish he was still alive. But Jeremy has never met Jeff Greason as a wonderful daddy and as a well person, but we can tell him the memories, remember, and really make sure we're happy about it, because he was a very talented person, and we'll remember him in our hearts and make sure we tell Jeremy what a wonderful daddy Jeff Greason was. And even though he died, we still have his memories right here in our hearts.
My name is Johnny. As of course you all know, we go back a long way, and I've come to know all of the Greasons over the years, and just remember the fondest memories of everybody, and Jeff in particular, with his unique sense of humor, and always seemed to look at things logically and a bit more responsibly, say, than like Steve, older brother, but. We one time that I remember the most up at the lake, and of course there were all great memories up at the lake. I mean, it was never ever a bad moment up at the lake. But we all jumped into this canoe that was probably not meant for more than 2 people, and I think maybe 6 or 7 of us piled into it, and we rowed out. We rowed the canoe out to the middle of the lake, and of course the water was very it was precariously close to to the edges of the boat, but needless to say, we swamped the boat out in the middle of the lake, and of course we were, the canoe disappeared underneath the water, but we were floating around and screaming, and Jeff was like, "Geez, I told you this the canoe was overloaded." But fortunately, we had people coming from shore in their speedboats, thinking that we were in peril, that our laughter was being misconstrued as screams of "help, help," and while we were just laughing uncontrollably. So that's one of my special memories. I remember Jeff saying, "Come on, guys, this canoe is overloaded. We're not going to make it out here." We didn't make it. We swamped right in the middle of a little swamp, but we all got back to the shore safely, and that was fun. One of my fun memories. So. Love and thoughts to all the family. We're going to miss Jeff because he was definitely a very special person. So God bless and love to all of you.
Rebecca, I've been blessed to be part of the Greason family. Steve and I have been best friends since we were in kindergarten, and I've gotten to know Jeff through the years. And rather than share a specific memory, I just want to share, I have a lifetime of memories with being up at Squam Lake, and just sharing a room with 5 guys at night and in the morning. Certainly we had our fair share of laughs, and Jeff was a huge part of that. And secondly, I'll always remember heading up to Steve's wedding with Jeff and Matt and Johnny and myself, and 6 walkie-talkies, and all just kind of talking back and forth with our walkie-talkies all the way up to Ithaca, New York. So I will always be a part of the Greason family, and certainly we'll continue to see each other. But we'll miss Jeff. I'll certainly miss him and the times that we had. And that's it. So we all love Jeff, and we'll all miss him.
Jeremy, be strong and courageous, and do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Annabelle, the Lord will watch over your coming and your going, both now and forevermore. Now, in closing, I have a prepared piece here. It's very short, but I have thought many times over the last 10 years that I owed a thank you to Jim and Stephanie because they hired Rebecca to be a nanny when the girls were babies. And then they talked her into coming to New Hampshire, which I wasn't particularly pleased about at the time. But then she met Jeff. And Jeff was wonderful. And we had all this great time when he was a great dad, he was a great husband, and a great son-in-law. The Lord has plans for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. And we have this hope as an anchor for the soul. It's firm, it's secure, and it enters into the very inner sanctuary behind the curtain where our forerunner, Jesus Christ, has entered on our behalf.
Okay, well, kids, you've probably heard me tell these stories before, but I know that this is for posterity. So I wanted to let you know how great a dad your dad really was. Before your dad married your mom, he called me up, and I lived 3,000 miles away, and he called me and said, I want to ask your daughter to marry me. Is that okay with you? And I said yes, because I knew that your dad was a great guy. And years went by and we only visited once in a while because we lived 3,000 miles away. But you know that at one point I had cancer too. And I had built a garage and I had cancer and I couldn't finish building it because of my cancer. I was busy getting well. And then I forgot all about it. And one summer when your dad came out, he found all this electrical wiring and all these switches and things. And he said, hey, what's all this stuff for? And I said, well, I was building that garage and I never did put the electricity in. And he says, well, can I do it for you? And I said, sure. And he took 2 days out of his vacation visiting us, and he put all the wiring in that shop and garage for me, including all the electrical outlets and switches and lights, everything. He did it all. That's what kind of a dad your dad was. And he was a great son-in-law for me, a great husband for your mom. Just wanted you guys to understand all that stuff. Thank you very much.